This is the consolidation for data meeting number 4 for group 2. So this week's rules consisted of Julian as the leader and facilitator, Paul as the researcher, and myself, Heidi, as the consolidator. In my research to find new technology to complete the screencast, I first tried doing the screencast with EasyVid. It looked easy enough, hence the name. I did an entire recording, and as I played it back, it was a recording of my screen, but with some music that they chose over top. When I went back, I could not figure out how to get it to record my screen and my voice at the same time. So then I went searching again for another application, and I tried Filmora. So Filmora, I watched the video on how to complete that one, and each time I tried to launch it on my computer, I would tell it to record and then it would disappear. So I've had to digress a little, and I've gone back to Screencast-O-Matic, which seems to be the simplest and easiest form of completing one of these screencasts. Alright, so to start our meeting, we were looking at our action plan tracking sheet and deciding on which instructional tactics that we could include to improve student comprehension and understanding on standard 8EE5. So our first instructional tactic is a Desmos online activity. This is an activity that we have discussed over the past few weeks in our data meetings, in our chats, in our emails, in our correspondence. So it was fitting that we started with that tactic. So this is something that students can complete online, and we decided that we could use it several different ways. You can see it would be used several different days throughout the week. It doesn't have to be a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It could be sporadic. We could use them as warm-ups, exit tickets, and formative assessments. So there are different modes depending on how we would use this resource. They have it where you can set up so that students are sharing their answers with each other. So this would be the warm-up type activity where students are answering a question, sharing it with their classmates. Classmates could then respond, agree or disagree with the answer, and then it starts that student discourse at the beginning of the classroom. Or if we were going to use them as exit tickets or formative assessments, then the teacher can set the question so that they only submit it to the teacher. So now we don't have answers being shared and only the teachers receiving that information. Our next activity or tactic is an application called MyScript Calculator. This is an app that Paul has on his Mac. And you can see I'm a little jealous that I have a Windows computer and can't download it, but you can see that students can just type in an equation, or an expression rather, and the calculator will convert that and solve it for them. And you can add in pretty complex expressions. You can see that we've got multiplication within a division, fractions within fractions, exponents. So if you look here, you can even solve for missing variables, where here this is actually solving an equation for them. This would be really helpful, especially for those students having calculator accommodations. They do have to know how to set up the proportion within these assignments, but the calculator would then follow through on the rest of the calculations for them. So that's just an Apple application free that students or teachers could download on any Apple device. Our next tactic is OpenEd. So this is also an online activity that we could use. We wrote that we would use it once a week. So this would be something that we would assign on a Monday. give kids several days to complete it. We know not all students have access to technology every night when they go home, but this would provide them the opportunity to come to the teacher, to gain access to a computer, to go to the media center during their breaks at school. I really like this activity because you can see that it's aligned specifically to the standard itself. So this is that standard that is our focus throughout these data meetings is 8EE5 for grade 8. These questions are starting to get a little closer to what the PARCC assessment would look like, where we have real life applications that students are having to convert to different representations such as graphs or coordinate points or equations. Then, really good thing about this resource is that we have the attached resources for each question. Each question has its own resource. So if a student is struggling with an answer on this problem, we've got a Khan Academy video here. We've got other lessons that it links back to and videos that people have posted themselves. And some of the questions you can see are multiple choice. Some of the questions are free response. So this helps kids get into the practice of how to input an answer into a free response box on a computer, which is something they often struggle with the first time they have to complete the PARCC exam. Our next tactic is one of my favorite to supplement in my classroom. It's this Engage New York. So these assignments correspond very well with any Common Core curriculum. They have a lot of questions that ask them to explain, and that's the great part here, is students learning how to explain and justify their mathematics. That's a huge focus in Common Core. But you can see that this is a pretty extended activity, and again you can search by standard, and the lesson numbers don't necessarily correspond with the lesson number you're using in your own curriculum, but it's the same type of assignments. And this Engage New York will also come with teacher responses to show you answer keys. You can see there's a couple of examples to start with. So these could be guided notes, and then you have some problems that the students can complete on their own. So this would be something that we would use interchangeably with, I'm going to skip over the Mastery Connect, and with this Maryland Common Core lesson plan. So each state has their own version of the Common Core curriculum, but they're all pretty similar to each other. So here's one that Maryland has put together. Montgomery County, where I teach, has their own format, which looks extremely similar. PG County would have their own format as well. But you can see that they corresponds, it aligns with the specific standard, and there's a lot of information in these lesson plans. It tells you the student outcomes. So this is what the student should be able to do at the end of these lessons. It even guides you through a warm-up to do at the beginning of the lesson. You have closing activities and how to relate it back to your student themselves. And this particular lesson plan has 3 different activities. It goes through explaining the activities. And then you can see we even got formative assessment, key questions, things that you should be able to ask the students throughout the lesson period and they be able to answer. And then at the bottom we have the actual activities. So these are activities you could print out for students. They come with teacher answer keys. This was something, we really liked this lesson plan because it was something that we felt even a new teacher could pick up and follow through, and it kind of explains what Common Core should look like in the classroom. So that we said daily. So you would either be using one of these Maryland Common Core lesson plans or the Engage New York. There may be a week where you only use the Maryland Common Core, or you only use Engage New York, or you can use them throughout the week, the 2 of them. The last one we have here is this Mastery Connect website. So this website has many resources within it. So you can see here that their focus here is to help the teacher, and there's different things that are involved here. So we have curriculum maps to help us plan. They have assessments within them. What you can do is, we've got the common assessments. You can share them, create them, share them with other teachers. I like that they have embedded this Socrative, where you can create assessments, and the assessments have different parts. There's immediate feedback to the students, immediate feedback to the teacher. We've got a grading tool embedded into this resource, so you can keep track of how students are doing on individual standards and individual parts of a lesson. And then it even produces reports, so it's nice to be able to have a report to look at the data when you are giving an assessment, and you can adjust your instruction from there. So at the bottom, to wrap up, we decided that our most important evaluation metric for this particular standard would be the third quarter benchmark. I mentioned the PARCC assessment earlier. That is ultimately what we want the students to be able to pass and show mastery on. But during our discussion, we decided that the results for PARCC come back way too late in the school year in order for the teacher to actually use that information and help the students do any reteaching or relearning. So we wanted to focus on our third quarter benchmark. And so then we had that goal from the previous data meeting that 75% of students to demonstrate 80% proficiency on standard 8.EE5. So that was data meeting 4 for group 2.